with Cameron again. It's Tuesday afternoon. I think we both had lunch.
Delicious.
Feeling okay. Delicious lunch at Biblos.
Yes.
And in the background is playing Michel Petrucciani. Did I pronounce that
That's
correct?
right, yes.
Okay, in the background.
Live at the Village Vanguard date from the mid-'80s.
Okay. And he died 15 years ago.
That's right. Yeah.
Great sound. Actually, I was listening to him and I was wondering, in Europe, let's say, and jazz pianists in Europe, why is it that France produces people like Petrucciani, but then you look at other countries, and maybe you can help out here, Italy, even maybe Germany. No, I can't, nothing comes to mind of any great jazz musicians or pianists or anybody like that, because I know obviously when you go up north to Scandinavia, especially Norway.
Yeah.
Norway is ECM country.
That whole, well, ECM, the record label was founded in Germany.
Germany,
in
okay.
Munich in 1969.
Okay.
Head producer is Manfred Eicher. So.
All right, okay.
He's the architect behind all of the releases. Over thousands at this point.
Right.
But it is interesting that there seems to be a relative absence of German musicians in the jazz sphere, at least compared to the whole classical canon of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Schubert, Schumann,
right.
Brahms. All these guys are all German. So
yeah.
I would say that in the Norwegian sphere, there's Jan Garbarek and Bobo Stenson and that whole glacial, kind of austere.
Terje Ripdahl.
Yeah.
These are all Scandinavians.
Yeah. And
so it's interesting.
That whole aspect evolved from that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that, at the most recent NEA Jazz Masters Lifetime Achievement Awards, the National Endowment for the Arts, Jamie Abersol was honored, and he's produced this whole catalog of play-alongs, but it's exclusive to the Blue Note category, and it's just been an instrumental resource for all these musicians to use for years to play along with a rhythm section for their favorite tunes. As it happens, a separate anecdote that the pianist for the Bad Plus, Ethan Iverson, relayed via Twitter was that he talked to Manfred Eicher, and Manfred had never even heard of Jamie Abersol, which would explain why there's no Jan Garbarek play-along.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, maybe there's just not that same kind of educational structure to learn, that it has to be more of an individualized process or in the conservatory, and not just these players that can, play with their favorite, groups for tunes, which maybe creates a little more of a homogenized sound and approach versus trying to find your own voice through other means.
Now, what do you think of the criticism that some have about ECM, that it's just really good, easy listening, and it doesn't really stand up with the most creative American musicians and what they're doing?
I would say someone that has that perception of it probably hasn't heard much.
Okay.
And
so you reject that?
I completely reject that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The music of ECM gets pigeonholed sometimes as being somnolent or very, just these wailing glacial cries of Jan Garbarek, and kind of just gets associated with the 70s stuff of Jan Garbarek and that sound, but it's diversified so much since then. There's the ECM News series, which was created in the mid-'80s, which features modern classical compositions. And then there's music like the Pat Metheny group, which I would not call easy listening, although some might, but he's created stuff like Song X with Ornette Coleman, which is really aggressive music.
Yeah.
In fact, ECM, I would say, is known as much for their turbulent output and things that embody that gritty, rough, jagged musical terrain as much as the easy, pleasant listening.
So, but if somebody said ECM to you, the first name that comes to mind would be Jan Garbarek. You think he's, because you've mentioned him several times in this interview.
For me, the first musicians that come to mind are Keith Jarrett and Chick Corea and Jan Garbarek. Just because they were some of the first to record for ECM.
Yeah.
Chick had a whole series of piano improvisational albums, volumes 1 and 2, and then he did children's songs in the 80s. That's kind of his equivalent of concert or something. And then Keith obviously had the Cole concert in '75 that allowed ECM to expand, and it remains the best-selling solo piano album of any genre today. And I would say that that 70s aesthetic is probably the first association that I would make. But then you just have to look at, later works of, the Terje Ragdahl has some really varied, compositional work as well as improvisational. And then there's this whole cadre of ECM musicians. John Abercrombie was the ECM house guitarist for a while.
Yeah.
And pretty much his entire output is on ECM, as well as Keith Jarrett.
Right.
So it's hard to ignore those musicians that have been ECM loyalists for, if not a good portion of their career to present, as in Keith Jarrett, the entirety of their career.
Yeah, but you don't see a division between the American ECM people and the Northern European ones like Garbarek and Ribdahl. You don't think there's a...
No, I do see it. I do see a difference there. I don't think ECM tries to make its artists fit into its agenda or anything like that, or going for a certain sound. I think Manfred Eicher is known for giving his artists freedom. I think he just chooses artists that have that combination of innovation, tradition, and an individual voice, which embodies the whole jazz tradition. Now, ECM has been criticized for not having an overt relationship with the blues, and especially in the Wynton Marsalis, Stanley Crouch camp. That's tantamount to disrespect, because the blues are what jazz has evolved from. But I think that loses sight of the nature of jazz, which is to define itself. And if you call something jazz, it's going to be jazz for the most part, because people probably aren't going to be seeking it out. And it's going to, for the most part, play by its own rules. It could be danceable, it could be not, but it tends to be more uncompromising. And I think that's why ECM is quintessentially jazz, no less so than Blue Note.
Okay. All right. Okay, so good. So I'll stop that and we'll pick up another subject. That's Cameron talking about ECM.